Hey guys, this is Charles with Charlotte Area Historical Gamers, and today I'm going to talk about commands and colors, the different types of systems that are out there, and what I like about each one, its complexity level, and how to play the game in general. So Memoir 44 is the easiest, so we're going to start with that one. The board is basically oriented in sections, so you've got the left section, center section, and right section, and anything on this line can be used in either section. You're going to have command cards, which basically tell you how to order a unit. And when you order a unit, you're going to order it, and then after all your units are ordered, then you move, and then after all your units are moved, then you fire each unit individually. So different cards, basically the command cards will tell you which units you can order, and then there's also flavor cards, which each game in the system that kind of gives a feel for World War II or whatever era that it's for. You're going to have a book with scenarios in it, and the scenarios will lay out the terrain for you, or how the battle is specifically laid out. The unit types in Memoir 44 are very simple for the base game. So there's infantry, tanks, and artillery. And so the dice are kind of geared to show you what you hit when you roll the dice. And the distance that you're away from it, or the type of terrain that you're in, might decide how many hits that unit might take. So, or dice that unit would get to roll. So an infantry would hit an infantry, a tank would hit a tank, a grenade hits anything, which is the only thing that can hit artillery, a flag makes the unit retreat, a star is a miss, and I think the other option is another infantry symbol. So you'll order the units, you'll move the units, you'll fire the units, you'll roll the appropriate dice, and if you hit that symbol, depending on the type of terrain it's in, these are the symbols or the hits that you will take on that unit. In this particular game, there are figures. And so basically, as the unit is hit, you will remove one of those figures away until you achieve an objective. And so the objective is indicated by the scenario, how you win the game. And in this one, one player gets 5 cards, one player gets 4, and the condition of victory is 5 medals. So there's lots of special scenarios where certain things will happen, or you'll have objectives to take towns, things like that. So all the games have that premise of left, center, right, special dice to indicate how to do hits, command cards and flavor cards mixed in, which are still considered command cards, and the unit types. Some of them are figures, like this game. Some of them have blocks, and you'll achieve a certain victory condition of breaking the other enemy's morale by destroying 5 units or taking an objective, or something along that line. Some great things about Memoir 44 is it has a lot of expansions. Now, unfortunately, a lot of them aren't available, but you can do epic format, which means you can join 2 boards together to do one big game for like 2 to 8 players. It's a lot of fun. There's campaign systems. You can actually buy one of the campaign books online in a PDF, and that links a bunch of battles together to do like a whole campaign battle, whatever. And then you've got, expansions. So each expansion kind of brings some sort of flavor to the Pacific theater, or the Russian expansion, or the Mediterranean expansion. Kind of gives something that you wouldn't expect, like the Pacific theater, the Japanese get a gung-ho, which means they don't, I'm sorry, the Marines get gung-ho, but the Japanese don't retreat from battles like normal. So they're fierce in their battle, they go forward no matter what, they don't stop running. So that's kind of cool about this system. So here's the good news. That was the worst part of the video, just because I wanted to explain the basic concepts of the game and the differences between each one. So Battlecry is about the Civil War. The rifles will have a longer range, but it's kind of like mostly focused on a closer view of the battlefield. So Memoir 44 is kind of like a bigger up-in-the-air view, where this is kind of up close and more personal in a sense. The unit types are similar in the fact that it's infantry, cavalry, and artillery. It's kind of similar with Memoir 44 in the sense that you've only got 3 types of units. Your artillery shoots pretty far. Your cavalry has to be next to somebody to shoot. And then your infantry is mainly driving the battle, running around the battlefield, trying to take advantage of terrain, catch the enemy out in the open, and things like that. There aren't any expansions for Battlecry, and there's very few Overlord games where you can do 2 to 8 players. So basically, when you play this game, you'll be restricted to the scenarios in the book, but fortunately, this one has about 30 scenarios, so it's pretty good. There are leaders in the game, so you get some nice advantages of leaders, and that's about the biggest change for this. So this is the first game in the series. The use of leaders in the game was the big change for this, and using those leaders to help get better fire attacks is what this game is all about. So next we have Command & Colors Ancients, which is focused on Rome versus Carthage. And the interesting changes for this game is that they invented battle back, which basically means when a unit attacks another unit and they're right next to them, that unit has the capability of striking back. So there's also about 10 different types of units, maybe more, on each side. So where Memoir 44 was focused on the terrain, and Battlecry was as well, this one focuses more on different unit types and how to use those unit types in the open. So when you look at the scenario book, you'll see there's lots of scenarios where there's lots of open ground and no mountains and things like that. So you've got to figure out a way to get your heavy elephants into a position to attack somebody. And elephants are kind of fun. They kind of do this thing called rampage, where they get shot and they're in the middle of a bunch of people. They stampede around everybody and kind of hurt the troops around them. So you got to be careful about things like that. Also, morale was introduced in this game. So if you have units in a line together, they basically form a cohesive line of morale. So when a unit's attacking them with flags, they don't have to retreat. In Memoir 44, a flag usually meant a retreat unless you're in a specific type of terrain. But this game kind of enforces using your troops as your way to prevent from retreating from battle. There's also leaders in the game. Leaders add an additional die with the unit they're in and the unit next to them, so they instill fear in their troops. And learning how to use all the different unit types in this game is a lot of fun. So you're going to find heavy infantry, which shoot like 5 dice in close combat, but they can't shoot ranged. And you're going to find light infantry, which can move 1 or 2 spaces and only fire 1 or 2 dice. And they're very weak. But if a heavy infantry gets a hold of those guys, it's going to tear them up. Very cool mechanics as far as retreats goes. So an example would be light cavalry, are probably the most fragile units in the game. If somebody gets within close combat of them and rolls 1 flag against them in a battle, they have to retreat up to 4 hexes. And if they go off the board, the unit is gone. So it's pretty cool how they design the mechanics. This is a block game, so you have to put stickers on everything. And a lot of fun. Probably the most fun and most chaotic of the series. There's lots of good expansions for this. I think there's probably 6 right now. And you can do Overlord formats playing up to 8 people by connecting 2 boards together. Commands and Colors Medieval is very similar to Ancients, but one thing it's added is inspired leadership. So you have the ability to have a special card that your whole army can do once you've saved up enough tokens. And I think you start a scenario with about 6 tokens, and then you can decide to use those whether to recover from a battle or do special actions. And it's about building that strength in the inspirational leadership tokens. A lot of fun. Again, you've got blocks, but that inspired leadership is probably the biggest change between Ancients and this game. This game focuses on the battles between the Byzantines and the Persians in 528 to 586 BC. And I'm sure there's going to be more expansions out for this series, but I don't think there's any announced just as of yet. Commands and Colors Tricorn is a lot of fun too. It does a great job of doing American War of Revolution. AWI, Independence. All right, sorry, American War of Independence. And so you've got the same mechanics as the other two games so far. You've got tactics cards, one specially for the British and one specially for the Americans. And so what that allows you to do is you've got a command card that you normally play, and you can take a tactic card and add on a special attack or some sort of special incentive into the game that really helps you do something interesting that's only the Americans could do or only the British could do. There's morale built into the game, and so the cool mechanic here is that every time a unit takes a hit, it has to do a morale check, and when it does that morale check, the less units it has, the tougher that morale check gets. And if it fails its morale check, it basically runs off the board. So games can go really quick. They start kind of difficult at times because everybody's kind of getting to a position, but once it starts rolling, you know, people start running off the battlefield, and it's very much like I would imagine that American War, Revolutionary War was. A few more unit types than Memoir 44, but less than Ancients and Medieval. Very fun. A little bit chaotic with the units running off the board. The flavor of the extra cards is really nice, and there's also a French expansion and more. There's no Indians in this one, which I was kind of surprised. It's a little more expensive. It's made by Compass Games, and plays anywhere from 60 to 90 minutes, as the rest of them do, and the rest of the ones we've talked about, and it's a fun system. One other thing I forgot to mention about this game, too, is that at the beginning of most scenarios, there's an opening cannonade, and that basically means your cannons are firing into the front lines of the troops in that particular scenario. So this can change the game mechanic a little bit, and you'll see a little bit more of that in the next one we're talking about, which is the Great War. But the opening cannonade is a great way to kind of disperse the battlefield just a little bit. So I've always heard that trench warfare games were always difficult to play, and this one does a great job of making it interesting. The first thing that's going to happen in the game is an artillery barrage that basically, in the middle of the board, there's a whole bunch of wire and things like that. And artillery is going to come in and just hit all that wire and turn it into trenches for your troops to get across the board. There's tactics cards in this, which have a great flavor for World War I. And you get command tokens, which you use those command tokens to play the values on the command cards. These are the command tokens, and certain things in the game will allow you to build these up. And the nice mechanic is that when you roll a star, you get one of these tokens. So when you're attacking somebody and you miss, even though you still miss, you get something good that happens for you, which is these tokens, which allows you to play the cards, which are kind of fun. Alright, so here's the cards. You've got your standard command card still, and then you're going to have tactics cards too. So on the top of each tactics card, you will see an amount to pay using those tokens. So you might have 8 tokens or 4 tokens. If you want to do an off-board artillery, you can use those tokens to do it. And there's a cost associated with these cards. Here you go. So 3 tokens in order to play this card, and you just take 3 of those. If you don't have the tokens, you can't do it. So you're pretty much stuck with that card until you can figure out a way to use it. Battle Lore is a fantasy version and has that same mechanic in it, and it's a lot of fun. But this is a really cool game, a lot of fun. The cards have a lot of flavor as far as like lice, trenchfoot, lots of kind of things that World War I-ish, and kind of give that feel of just, I don't know, I'd say awfulness, because that whole World War I was just terrible, terrible. And you can really get a good sense of why it was terrible when you start playing games like these. The expansion with the tanks has some really nice plastic tanks in it. This one's made by the Plastic Soldier Company. And then they came out with an expansion called the French and More. And they gave some more units with the game, some extra unit types. So in the base game, I think there's only 2 or 3 types of units. Infantry, machine guns, and a few mortars and off-board artillery. And so with this expansion, the French one, they added more specialty type units. So there's a light machine gunner, heavy machine gunner, all kinds of fun stuff like that. Great system. A lot of fun. No leadership. So it's not as complicated as Ancients in the sense that the unit types aren't very heavy. The complexity is somewhere in between Memoir 44 and Ancients. And so my favorite, but last one we're going to talk about today is Command and Colors Napoleonics. One of the most interesting things about this series is that as a unit gets weaker, it fires less dice. There's about, I'm going to guess, 14 different types of units, and there's also all sorts of types of terrain. The base game is basically just French and the British, and it is a lot of fun. There's 5 more expansions, maybe 6. There are tactics cards that came out later on, and another expansion for tactics marshals and something. There's epic format available. So this is the most intriguing as far as the Napoleonic feel of the game and how it incorporates it into the battles. You have units who are able to fight together, so you can have a infantry and an artillery doing combined arms. A lot of the flavor of the cards is just really fun. So there was a lot of thought that went into this particular game series. And if you like Napoleonics, or if you want to learn more about Napoleonics, this series does a great job of explaining it. It's got the same type of morale that the other Ancients had, Medieval had, and you've got leaders in the game, which add to the battle. You've got battle backs. You've got artillery, and again the special era specific command cards, which is a lot of fun. So I hope you get to try out one of these systems, or maybe all of them, I don't know. It's a great series, and the great thing is that if you want to switch from one type of era to another, the rules are fairly similar in flavor. So there's a guy called Doubt72 on BGG that has a great player aid that shows the differences between Ancients, Medievals, Samurai Battles, Tricorns, and Napoleonics, the different dice that are involved, how the units are basically constructed, close combat, how it works, range dice, leader hits, and how they work. So there's minor differences in all the series, but if you think about 5 different games here being able to be summarized on one sheet of paper of like the differences, you've still got the order, move, fire mechanic, you've got the play command card mechanic, sometimes you've got tactics cards. All the dice are different, but the dice are very similar in the fact that whatever the symbol is, that's what happens. So you kill an infantry or you make somebody retreat. Once you understand the mechanics of one, it's very easy to switch over to another. A lot of fun. I've had so many games of this and so many good times, and I hope you do too. Thanks for watching, and take care.